Slaanesh is a faction that likes to go fast, and as a result, their land battles tend to be over in a big hurry one way or the other, so we're going to take a look at a selection of them today. First up is Slaanesh versus Wood Elves. I've got Sigvald, Prince Sigvald the Magnificent here, Bringers of Beguilement, second line of some anti-infantry marauders, Hellstriders out on the flank, Allures of Shadows on the chariot, and some Marauder Spears up front to prevent me getting face charged by Wild Riders potentially. Of course, Furies up here in the air, and then some more Hellstriders over on the side. For the Wood Elves, Sisters of Twilight up in the air are a very safe choice. They're definitely not going to be threatened by anything I can bring except Furies, which her and I guess them and the Spellsinger can easily best. I've got some Swift Shiver Shards, Deepwood Scouts for high DPS, Dryads, some War Dancers and Blade Singers, some Treekin as well, Wild Hunters of Kurnos. So we're going to get things underway, and the high DPS certainly of the Swift Shiver Shards will help. They also deal magic damage, which will help cut through the physical resistance. Now omnipresent on Slaanesh's roster. However, you can see, ooh, nasty volley there, right there into the Bringers of Beguilement. But my opponent pulling back his Deepwood Scouts ever so slowly. We're going to hit one of them with the Furies there. They immediately start firing back to the Furies and do some pretty hilarious damage. The other unit is going to be, nasty anti-infantry shot, point blank from the Sisters, straight through the Pink Furies. We're here on Gorgazan, classic multiplayer map. One thing to note about this fight, though, is the trade between Dryads and these anti-infantry Marauders is very, very inefficient for the Dryads, and you'll see that play out in just a minute here. Later on, we did some testing and realized that Dryads just straight up need a buff. You might expect them to trade well here because of the magic damage and the armor, but in fact, it's very inefficient, so I would expect Dryads to probably receive a buff before Immortal Empires goes live, at least from the build that you've seen them in here. But Blade Singer's now running in with nice glowing Treekin, cool new effects on them. Nasty anti-infantry shots once again, just wrecking the Furies as they're blobbed up in the air around the Spellsinger. That being said, the infantry fight is going fairly poorly for the High Elves, or the Wood Elves here. Sorry, the War Dancers get into combat. They'll do okay. Wild Hunters of Kurnos and Dryads managed to absolutely smash one Hellstrider there. But got just successive Melkos Mystifying Miasmas, and I think I might have Pit of Shades also. No, actually, Occam's Mind Razor, interesting. Not sure about that, but anyway, over here on the side, these Devoted Marauders, the Spears and the Anti-Infantry will both be able to trade fairly well there. Hellstriders get up and around here, also just kind of leaving these guys in tactical reserve for now, although they really should be riding down those Deepwood Scouts to help protect the Bringers of Beguilement here, who are doing a great job DPSing down some Treekin. They're also going to take some damage back from the Treekin, of course, given their magic damage. I almost wonder if like a sort of tree blob attrition build would be the best way to fight Slaanesh as Wood Elves, because something like this, going with kind of a balanced-ish build, your missile units end up getting ridden down fairly quickly. And another big issue is the chariot. The single-entity chariot in particular of Slaanesh is a big problem. You're going to have to use Wild Riders or other cavalry to counteract, but the problem there is that Slaanesh cavalry trades very cost-effectively into yours, so on paper it seems like a fairly unfavorable engagement, or matchup rather, for Wood Elves. I don't know, perhaps if you go all in and bring like 12 range units, Swift Shiver Shards, maybe some Hagbane tip cavalry as well, could make a difference, but it's going to be tricky. Here, the Wild Hunters in the back line just get completely surrounded by Slaanesh Hellstriders, and reindeers versus weird anteater lizard things. Well, there's way more of the lizard things, so unfortunately the moose calves, reindeer calves are going to go down there. And things are already looking pretty dicey. We're less than 4 minutes in, and I've managed to wrap up most of my opponent's army already. Bringers of Beguilement, despite getting some good DPS focused on them, able to get in here and enrage all of these things. The Spellsinger in particular, not allowing her to cast any spells is quite nice. The ground forces of the Wood Elves are evaporating in a big hurry. Sigvald also just kind of grinding through. Sigvald is a great addition to Slaanesh's roster because it provides something that you really don't have. Something that the Warriors of Slaanesh, of course, with their heavy armor and defensive abilities of the Hell Scourges, and even the Sword and Board variant too. All of them are going to be great options for Slaanesh to provide you an actual tanking anvil for you to hammer into. Right now, in our current build, we've only got Sigvald that I can show you. So he'll have to be the single small anvil. And the rest of the army, we're just pretty much in cleanup mode at this point, so we'll fast forward a little bit through this endgame. We've got a few other replays to get through. Also get some nice cinematic shots as we do finish things off. The Elves here. Gonna eat an Arrows of Kurnos. Oof. Nails the Marauder right next to her. And she herself is almost finished. Or that was, an Amber Spear. But we're going to throw a Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma up there just to do a little bit of DPS up in the sky. Not that it's really going to do much at this point, but, you know, just despite the sisters, the Elves throw a spell there and then immediately die. And the Eagles will fly around for some time. It's going to take them a while to give up their leadership, use up the rest of their ammunition, but there's no question. At this point is Slaanesh's game. So, again, sort of this balanced build for the Wood Elves with lowish numbers. I don't know. I'd have to kind of workshop this matchup a little bit myself and see, but I do think perhaps that if you were to defend your trees well enough, like the tree attrition game, because Slaanesh, even if once they get Marauder Horsemen, they're still going to have very limited missile options. And although they do have very good armor piercing and magic damage, the trees still with their defense, and like Treekin and Tree Men also have charge defense. Perhaps you layer them on top of some Elven Spear Infantry, also get some charge defense. I don't know. It might not end up working, but it is something I definitely want to try in the future. For today, though, let's quickly run through the values and get to the next one. Sigvald really didn't do much. The Bringers of Beguilement racking up insane value, as is typical. Likewise, the Hellstriders just so cost-effective in this matchup. As long as they're not eating direct charges from something like Wild Riders, they can trade super cost-effectively. And then the Anti-Infantry Marauders for Slaanesh are some of the best low-tier infantry in the game. Maybe slightly overtuned, perhaps, but we'll see. On the Wood Elves side here, both the Eagle characters doing a reasonably decent job, but not quite paying for themselves. The Treekins also didn't pay for themselves either, but I don't know. Maybe with, again, a full-on tree box, maybe even take Durthu for some nice offensive power. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, but for now, let's get on to the next matchup. Now, Sigvald is back, this time to try and deal with the Rats. I am, in fact, playing as the Rats. My opponent is Heir of Carthage, playing as Slaanesh. He also showcased this one on his channel, so be sure to go give him some love if you haven't. And for whatever reason you don't watch his channel already, he's a true OG of the Total War Warhammer scene, so definitely go check him out. Let's run over his build real quick. He's got Sigvald, Hell Scourges, 4 Hell Scourges up front, Allures of Shadows on the Chariots, some Secret Chariots as well. Got some Hellstriders here, a couple of them, a couple of Spear Marauders as well, and some regular Demonettes for myself. Massive horde of rats. Got some Wolf Rats here, Wolf Rats with poison, mix of magic and poison on each flank. Gracier Lore of Plague, big ol' rat ogre blob supported by a Pack Master, some Clan Rat Spears, Skaven Slaves, Warp Grinders, Poison Wind Globes, got some Skaven Slave Slingers, and the Council Guard Storm Vermin to hold as a nice anchor. So, yeah, Spawn of Slaanesh. Also, should have mentioned these guys, So Perfect Musk, they'll be here. One thing to note about Hellscourge is they did receive a little bit of changes from the base game. All Hellscourge units now have Charge Reflection and Expert Charge Defense, so they will negate the charge of any unit, infantry or cavalry-sized or, you know, large-sized, and they'll also reflect some damage. I think it's like a flat amount of damage on the charge, similar to how most spears and halberds, if we take a look at these Clan Rat Spears, you'll see they also have Charge Reflect. So, while I think, yes, the Marauder Slaanesh Spears also have Charge Reflection, they do only have Charge Defense against large. Anyway, we're missing some of the fight, though. Wolf Rats come out of the forest here and lay a nice ambush on some of these Hellstriders. The Hellstriders, definitely very squishy. If they don't get the charge and they get charged, it's not going to be great, but charging in the Chariots into the side here is actually a good call. The mass of the Chariots and their anti-infantry bonus, you can see, does a ton of damage, and especially leadership damage. Super low leadership of the Wolf Rats. Slaanesh might be able to break them and actually take that engagement. Meanwhile, back in the main fight race here, some of you guys misconstrued my video yesterday, or a couple of days ago, by the time you're seeing this, about the double summon Skaven build that I faced, thinking that I was trying to nerf summons in all aspects of the game, which is definitely not the case. I think summons should be very strong, and I think it should be part of the identity of Skaven, but one caster is really all you need. I mean, this right here is, what, 7 units plus that you can... well, 7 units that you can summon just with the one caster. Anyway, Gonna get a Rat Ogre charge in here. My opponent, once again, with the wide Slaanesh army and a big wide map like this, taxes your micro pretty heavily, so are able to get the charge off there on those Hellstriders, but he's also pressuring pretty heavily over on the flank here. I got his Aluris into my lines here, disrupting the Poison Wind Globes. A little bit late on my Warp Grinder to try and get the snare here, but likewise, my opponent a little bit late to pull away. But look at the explosion damage. This is one thing about Poison Wind Globes as they are currently implemented. The damage over time effect is pretty good. It doesn't do that much, but the Poison Wind explosion, the actual explosion damage, you can see there that the volley itself does quite a bit, and then we're going to pull away as the magical effect tanks my frame rate. Got this big old Rat Ogre blob fighting some devoted Marauders over here. The Heartseekers managed to get a nice rear charge, but I'm also doing a double envelopment here with these Wolf Rats, at least attempting to. Air does a great job kind of countercharging there and catching me before I'm able to get the charge off, although those Heartseekers are still taking very cost-inefficient damage. Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep. Yes. They're going to rout away there. And meanwhile, the Slaanesh Chariots also kind of making a mess of my backline. That being said, Warp Grinders did manage to snare the Aluris for a short amount of time, and we're able to do some pretty good damage. But check this out also. Scorch. Very good against low armor targets now. I don't remember ever being that good in Total Warhammer 2, but Gracier Lord of Plague has access to it just from his cart, from the bell, right? And as a result, he gets this bound ability. Yeah, pretty good stuff, all things considered. Also does flaming damage, which isn't super applicable here, but could be useful in some other matchups, like Nurgle, for example. Poison Wind Globes raining in from Slaanesh. I mean, obviously, Sigvald is doing a great job tanking. But this, speaking of tanking, likewise, my Rat Ogre blob, I've been very impressed. They've been able to deal with spears, some Hell Scourge Marauders, Heartseekers coming in and out, and now another rear charge coming in from some Hellstriders. So keep an eye on that in the back as the engagement kind of develops here. Council Guard once again catching up some Secret Chariots. The Heartseekers also over on the side of the map. A little bit of over-chasing, but that's the thing about the speed of Slaanesh in a big land battle like this with big, wide armies, especially when you're fighting Skaven. Very micro-intensive. I mean, fighting Skaven was already micro-intensive with any faction, but especially with a faction as fast as Slaanesh. But anyway, at this point, feeling pretty good about my chances. A lot of Slaanesh's power units have been dealt with. I mean, we still got to finish off this Chariot, which definitely is going to be very dangerous. If it's able to just run shop on me the entire time here. I also missed Dreaded 13 spell. You guys will have to go watch Arab Carthage's cast if you want to see that. This Storm Vermin was summoned and detonated a Demonette, which is a fun tongue twister, actually, and managed to just one-shot them, basically. So yeah, looking pretty good so far. If we take a look at the Gracier Lord of Plague spells, only 1,090 on the damage from the Dreaded 13th. Actually used it twice, it looks like, so there you go. I haven't been the most on point for this cast in terms of actual tactical gameplay, but I apologize about that. Just been, yeah, taking a look at kind of things in general. Talking about Slaanesh as a faction as a whole. Right now, I'm not too worried about this center engagement, although the spawn are still alive, providing that soporific musk. Summon Clan Rats are going to run away here pretty soon. I've still got the Council Guard hanging around. The Rat Ogre Blob, finally victorious, can come reunify with the rest of the fight and get the finish here. Another Scorch just roasting through those Slaanesh infantry. Really nice spell effect. Looks better than ever, I have to say. Never really appreciated how good of a spell that was visually until Total Warhammer 3, but Poison Wind's also back from route, barely hanging on to their leadership. Use some horrendous friendly fire to the Council Guard, but that's fine. Just trying to finish off whatever Slaanesh Marauders we can. The Rat Ogre Blob also. Watch them get in here. This Packmaster on his Brood Horror been doing a great job supporting this pack of Molder monsters. All the while, the Grace here holds the center and still attempting to continue to do so. A little bit more Poison Wind effect there. Nice hit on those Clan Rats. Again, horrible friendly fire. Very Skaven thing to do. But looking pretty good at this point. A little bit of a longer game, I guess, for Slaanesh. I said it was all going to be short games, but this one's going a pretty good length of time. At the same time, though, a little bit of a bigger map, wider armies. Does kind of lend itself to a slightly longer game here. Loris still just doing her best, trying to run through infinite infantry, and if it weren't for the Rat Ogres, the Loris could probably kill the rest of my army while Sigvald finishes the Grace here, but thankfully for me, I do still have this Rat Ogre blob alive. Council Guard there, got the Fascination, did a bunch of damage to them, also enraged them, keeping them away from the Loris, but we're still able to catch her one more time with the Warp Grinders, and then here comes the Rat Ogres. A few Wolf Rats also in here, just to full secure. I think these are the poison wolf rats. Yes? No, regular magic damage wolf rats, which also is quite nice. A little bit of a damage spike, obviously, against demonic units, but the Aloris getting finished off there, finally caught and killed. That should lead to army losses for Sigvald, so we'll fast forward through the end there as he decides to leave the battlefield fully intact. I mean, Sigvald's just impossible to kill, so why even try? Kill the rest of his army, and then he'll just run off the battlefield. In terms of value breakdown here for Air, the Heartseekers, you know, despite having a pretty rough situation, still get insane value, and that is pretty typical of them. Demonette that I missed getting detonated there didn't get any value, unfortunately. The Chariots also, I find the Seeker Chariots a little bit underwhelming. The single entity Chariots for Slaanesh, on the other hand, are very good. I might even take a second one. I think they're, what, 1,400 cost for the base unit, 1450. I believe if you cut all the spells and abilities from the Aloris, it's 1450. So either way, you cut these two Seeker Chariots and just take one more regular single entity Chariot, and all of a sudden that is an absolute nightmare for Skaven to have to deal with. Might be a little bit of overkill, but I also want to just go a tiny bit wider. The spawns end up getting a lot of kill totals, but not a whole lot of actual value, which is pretty typical against Skaven, I guess. A lot of summons to be had there. The Hellscourge Marauders, I think, probably should have been replaced by the Anti-Infantry Marauders. Generally, I think, I don't know, the Hellscourges just kind of sit in a weird place for Slaanesh. The Hellscourge Marauders, at least, where they're light enough that they're still not a very effective anvil, unlike the Hellscourge Warriors of Slaanesh, who will be a very effective anvil. In many ways, you should arguably just take the Spears, because they at least have an anti-large bonus, but really the anti-infantry ones are the most cost-effective in most situations for obviously for fighting other infantry, but it just, most situations you tend to throw your infantry into, and more importantly on offense, right? They're more an attack-oriented infantry, and Slaanesh is definitely an attack-oriented faction, especially without their heavy warrior units. So here, given that Skaven is primarily light infantry as a faction, I would definitely take the anti-infantry Marauders over the Hellscourges. But anyway, let's go on and get to one more battle here. Let's get to the Bony Boys next. Sigvald fighting now on his home turf as we are in the realm of Slaanesh, this time against the Tomb Kings, of course. I should preface this by saying the content creator that I'm fighting in this particular battle is not known as a multiplayer content creator, so relatively new to multiplayer, but still going to do a reasonably decent job with a nice density of fire here. Let's get to his build. A big wide line of skeleton archers, 5 skeleton archers, including the Blessed Legion, and I've definitely had success in the past against Slaanesh with just creating a high volume of fire. We'll see if he's able to protect them, though. He's got some skeleton warriors, tomb guards in the front line. Nekar warriors received some buffs. They now have a proper anti-infantry bonus, which they did not have before, of 7. Quite nice. Nice little DPS mid-tier infantry. Lich Priest of Nehekara. Also got some more skeleton spears and some halberds, chariots out on the side. And it's High Queen Khalida on a chariot as the Lord. She's also hidden, I guess, lady. Technically, she's hidden here in the woods. Yeah, on a chariot, it's an interesting choice. I don't think I've ever seen that, but it should be pretty good here. For my own build, of course, Sigvald, Marauders up front, some spears, got some anti-infantry Marauders, Lore of Slaanesh this time for the extra map-wide attack buff, and of course, Soul Grinder of Slaanesh for construct killing power. Also feels kind of fitting to bring my own Hellforged machine in order to fight the animated stone of the Tomb Kings. Not that they brought any constructs in this particular battle. I guess it makes sense. Slaanesh has a lot of armor piercing damage and melee, but I don't know, maybe like the Kemerian War Sphinx would have been a good choice here. But the skeletons, who knows, maybe formerly peasants. Archers are going to open up here. The Venom Staff from High Queen Khalida doesn't do a whole lot to Prince Sigvald. I don't know. Would have been interesting perhaps to see the damage against the Soul Grinder, but regardless, we're going to get a big old melee engagement underway. my opponent's kind of anchored his line against this little pit here of lava, so I can't directly path like a good full flank around. You can see I'm starting to get some incantation of vengeance there to slow down these Slaanesh marauders, but already a few of my spears and other units I had taking the fire initially are going to run away. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, I was able to use my mobile forces, outmaneuver his chariots, and catch and kill all of them relatively easily with the mass of Furies and Hell Scourge Marauders here. Tomb Guard come to support, but they can only do so much here. They'll definitely hit the Hell Scourge, Hell Striders pretty hard, but even the Furies could be able to maneuver up and around and get a rear charge. Meanwhile, did get some Marauders up and through. They're being chased by the Nekara Warriors, though, and actually get routed off by that little timely rear charge. So my opponent's doing a reasonably decent job, considering I'm playing Slaanesh. He's managed to keep his archer line online for quite a substantial amount of time here. Unfortunately, Khalida is not on her neck, which would have been great for you know, fighting the Soul Grinder. She maybe could have competed against it. Still would have been a great 1v1 trade, but my opponent, other than the Tomb Guard in melee, doesn't really have a great answer. Saw a little bit of a blob forming up there, so I'm going to drop that Lash. My opponent here also dropping the Ushabti Summon, just as a kind of a point of coaching. He knows who he is. I'm not going to name him, but maybe if you can get this template so that the Ushabti Summon in a surround against the Soul Grinder, that would also be a way dealing some consistent armor-piercing damage, even though they don't have anti-large. And they're in a surround like that, and they're all getting hits, bypassing some of the melee defense by being in the side or rear, definitely benefit. But Slaanesh swooping down, Slaanesh Furies, at this point victorious on the flanks, can start to clean up these skeleton archers. They are a huge threat to me, absolutely, to all of my units, even the Soul Grinder with its sundered armor there. The Blessed Legion doing a good job of focus firing there. But the Hell Scourges, again, victorious. We're going to have to look out for those Tomb Guard, but since they're slightly out of position, we can outmaneuver. Nekar Warriors managed to break some of that charge, but the Hell Striders do get through still and get on those skeleton archers. Fury's also victorious, pulling back up into the air. My opponent's got a pretty scary little infantry blob here, though, with another incantation of vengeance, this time going after the Furies, just trying to do enough damage to finish them off. Also debuff their speed a little bit. Yeah, in terms of Tomb King's magic, incantation of vengeance is alright. Doesn't do that much damage, but in this particular matchup, I think probably the incantation of desiccation, that big area of effect stat debuff, could help your undead units trade more effectively. Likewise, even Skullstorm, the Vortex could be decent. It's a little bit unpredictable, but I don't know. I have to kind of think about Slaanesh versus Tomb Kings a little bit more in terms of what lore of magic to bring. Lore of Light also might not be bad, actually. If you get a big Baroness Time Warp to do a bunch of damage to light Slaanesh units, that could be a way of dealing pretty good damage. You don't have the best AoE damage options with Tomb Kings, so it's not like you could take, you know, or fire or something else that would help you deal consistent AoE damage. You have some stuff, but maybe Lore of Death to, like, Spirit Leech down, the Chariot Caster, not really sure, but speaking of Chariots, Khalida helping to break up some more Slaanesh infantry. I mean, credit to my opponent here, considering he's not a multiplayer content creator. He's definitely acquitted himself very well. Pretty much killed all of my infantry. The only things that carried me were my 3 very powerful single entities here. And of course, the Hell Striders and the Furies definitely contributing to winning that flank fight. Very important. But both of us with our chariot ladies just absolutely marauding through the lines, just destroying everything in sight. Thankfully, though, I've still got some light cavalry online. The curse goes off there from High Queen Khalida, but she finally gets caught and gonna get finished off by Sigvald there. That will, of course, trigger army losses. So, final game done for today. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and it's a fun one. Definitely a matchup I want to explore some more. And one cool thing about playing with non-multiplayer people is that sometimes they bring builds that surprise you, right? And like this one here, I wouldn't have thought that high density of skeleton archer fire, if you can protect it, would have been super effective here. But my opponent utilized the terrain well. Probably could have brought a little bit more light cavalry. In fact, for this build, like, I get where he's coming from, the chariots. I like chariots against Slaanesh generally. I might have just put them up front and charged in the face of the Slaanesh infantry line rather than try and operate them on the flanks, but I do think you probably want some form of light cavalry here. I actually haven't tested Nehekara horsemen or skeleton horsemen into Slaanesh Hellstriders, but imagine that the Nehekara horsemen, I don't know, they probably still lose, but it might be an even enough trade that it's worth taking. You just need something to counteract all of Slaanesh's mobility and, you know, be able to countercharge a little bit there. But regardless, very fun battles in terms of the value breakdown here. 178 kills, not that much value on the Olores, but she definitely contributes well. 110 kills and some value on the Rider. Definitely didn't pay for himself, but it's nice to have the presence just in case. I guess the the Hellstriders and the Furies all returning some insane value there, so they're definitely pretty key to my success. Likewise, again, the anti-infantry devoted Slaanesh Marauders are insanely strong for the cost. They may end up getting nerfed before Immortal Empires goes live, or maybe shortly after. We'll see. But interesting stuff nonetheless. Tomb Guard trading pretty decently, all things considered. Skeleton Archers also don't need to do a whole lot to pay for themselves, and they mostly do. I mean, I guess 2 of them do. Likewise, Skeleton Spears, pretty cheap. I mean, they're mostly going to get run over here, but what can you expect? Nehekara Warriors also, definitely a unit that I need to look at more with that anti-infantry buff. They seem like they're going to be a solid option for anti-infantry DPS against light armor factions. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.